Last weekend, I attended a leadership training, and we spent most of the entire first day in some sort of structured small talk. I mean, it was as simple as we had this ball, and it was looked like a soccer ball, and basically every little square had a number on it, and we would just throw the ball back and forth. And once you had a number, then there was a variety of different questions that you could ask. So it was structured in that way, but it was casual, like, what's your greatest fear or something like that. And the entire day was spent in exercises like that. And, sometimes this can be fun, but also a lot of times when we're in our businesses, this can feel like a drag. I know that most of the time I have been so focused on efficiencies, I feel that small talk is a waste of time. That I don't know why we're doing that. I mean, we spent at this training almost an entire day with these kinds of questions and getting to know our team because we were put in groups of people that we're going to work with over the next month, basically. And, it is fun. There's a certain game aspect, but, a lot of times we want to get to the nitty gritty. We feel there's so much stuff that we need to do. And so it can be very hard to take the time and set aside just kind of this open time, which seems to serve no purpose. It doesn't seem to be efficient. It doesn't seem to be accomplishing the business goals, right? And I used to think these were a meaningless waste of time, but I was wrong. Our rush to be hyper efficient with quick messages on Slack, in emails, and, we have all these ways to quickly communicate the issues, the information that we need without small talk. We can skip it very easily so we can be seemingly more efficient. But there is a tax. And we do pay for that with our team, with our relationships. And today I'm going to talk to you about the truth of how small talk is a strategic investment in your team and in your customers that's going to drive your business growth. I'm going to show you what you need to do to build a high trust culture, and it will drive your revenue by 3.6 times revenue growth. So let's get in. Welcome to Mastering Business Flow, the essential podcast for business owners ready to transform their work life. I'm your host, Lindow, a certified productivity and systems expert. I'll help you close that critical CEO gap, the gap between working hard and having real control over your business. We dive into the systems and skills of high-performing CEOs so that you can stop being stuck in daily tasks and start flourishing today. It's time to achieve simpler, higher quality living. Let's start flowing. So let's talk about this efficiency paradox, this idea that we are being more efficient by skipping the small talk and getting straight to business. We have very thin margins usually as small business owners. So we're trying to cut out every little bit of fluff. And this is what I help business owners do. I go in, I'm looking for all friction points, everything that's slowing down their business. It seems that we want to look for, digital speed, automations. Casual chit-chat seems as a distraction and seems the opposite of all of these things. But there are some benefits to small talk that outweigh any of that lost time. And in fact, I think in the end, it can gain you time. It can make you more efficient with your time. So these are some of the reasons why I say that. Number one is it builds trust. And we know that everything is built on trust. And obviously it can build trust with customers, but I want to talk about how it can build trust with your teams. Because high trust teams are 21% more profitable than those without trust. So how does small talk help you build trust? Well, for one, normally a lot of these other communications, like a text or an email, we're going straight to the point, and we are just, let's go quick. That's the whole point of these kinds of communication. We're focused on the issues, and maybe we just send, a few words or a phrase or maybe a sentence or two, and we think we're being quick when we do that. However, because we haven't spent that time in small talk before, people don't know how to interpret the message. There's no tone in our messages, especially these really short ones. If it's not clear, the human brain, it wants to make things clear. The human brain is always trying to figure out everything. So if we ever leave anything hanging, the brain is working overtime to figure out what that means. And the same thing happens with our text or messages, that if we just send something abrupt, then all of a sudden we're trying to figure out, what does that text mean? I know I've done it before. I should have written down an example, but I know I've gotten texts and I'm like, what does she think writing me that? She's making all these assumptions. She doesn't know how hard I'm working. Then I spend time trying to come up with a reply that fits the story that I've come up with myself. However, if I have spent that time in small talk, I don't need all that questioning. Like, I know that person better. You get more of an emotional kind of vibe and feeling, their tone, their general interpretation of things, so that when they send something quick and maybe seemingly abrupt, we are actually using all that other information and of what we know, that history of conversations with that person. Maybe one text message can be a quick one, but we have a history of small talk conversations. But you can also build in a little bit more personalization with your messages. Like when I send an email, I always put that person's name in at the beginning. I am guilty many times of sending a message and then somebody replies, "Good morning," and I realize I slipped up again. But it's this acknowledgement. Small talk is a low-cost mechanism to overcome the time that people spend decoding your messages. We think we're sending a quick transactional message, but because we don't have that small talk investment, people are spending extra time trying to decode and figure out the message and the meaning and how they want to respond based on how they have interpreted the story that they made up themselves, because they are always going to make up a story in their minds if they don't have a clear picture. So when you have that small talk, you now have this kind of social glue, this emotional relationship, which creates a feeling of psychological safety with the others, that they aren't second guessing and trying to figure out your messages. And it's increasing the trust factor in your organization. And this is the important thing, is that small talk leads to trust. It's creating that glue, that social glue that you need to build trust. And if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the very bottom is that feeling of safety. And that's what the small talk conversation does, is it's building that sense of psychological safety that they then can risk and do anything else. Because without that baseline sense of safety, they can't do anything else. They can't use their brain. They can't even maybe point out flaws in the system to you, because they don't have that feeling of trust. Also, they are not going to take the risk to try new things, to experiment, to learn, when they don't feel that sense of safety. So small talk is a very simple step to take to build that sense of safety and trust in your organization. And when they have that, your whole company is going to benefit. The other factor is that when you have these environments with low trust, employees, when they don't have the psychological safety and they're in a more transactional environment, they don't feel that anyone cares about them. So just asking questions about their life makes them feel cared. They're more likely to burn out and leave, 2.26 more times more likely to seek a new job due to burnout. So that for you is a cost, because all the time that they sat in the job suffering from burnout meant that they may have been more stuck in their mind than focused on the goals of your company and helping your company to thrive. And if you think of they're feeling this way, on the verge of burnout, how are they interacting with your customers? How are they being able to solve the problems that come up, right? We want their mind, again, looking at that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we want them to feel safe so that they come to the job with good, positive feelings that then spread out to your customers. So without that, you are going to pay the cost. Plus, if they are leaving because of burnout, then there's a huge cost to the company on replacing, hiring, the turnover rate. It costs twice as much to replace an employee as to keep them. So the second reason that you want to engage in small talk is simply because 42% of the knowledge that we have in a company is not in some system like we think it is. It comes from these casual conversations, those water cooler conversations, the golf course, any of those. And this is the knowledge, the experience, things that aren't really spoken and written down. So it's almost half of the company's knowledge is just out in people's heads. I mean, obviously there's a lot of stuff that we can do. And this is another thing I work with my clients with, is getting things out of individuals' heads and into a system so that it's available for future employees and other people can see it. But a lot of information, oh, I had this conversation, or, oh, I submitted this proposal, whatever it is, happened from just casual interactions. So simply by touching base and engaging in small talk, you can learn information about what's going on, the status of projects, customer relations, anything, just by having these casual conversations that you will not find anywhere else in the company. So think about the amount of information you may be missing out in and that you can gain in by getting in these conversations. And the third reason is simply you learn more about your employees. And Adam Grant has a whole book talking about hidden talents. And then there's another book called Ask, where just by asking questions and learning about your employees, you may find that they have certain passions or talents that are not being utilized in their current roles. And you as a company can benefit. The more you learn about your employees, you may find that they have some other talents. Maybe they, well, I learned of one, for example, had a CAD drawing program at home and a 3D printer, and for a hobby was printing and designing things, which he was working in a cabinet company, so he could have easily been using those talents there as well. So once you ask those questions about their hobbies, you can find applications for your organization. And the same thing happens with our customers. And I think sometimes we're maybe a little bit more attuned to that, because with the employees, we're thinking, we have a job for you to do. Let's say focused on the job that needs to be done, instead of showing our employees that we care and that we want to know about them and that we want this to be a safe place for them to work. But we think about it with the customers. But when we have this small talk with the customers, that's where we can get into like the deep whys of why the product matters or what's important to them, so that we can alter our product, improve the product so it meets those customers' needs, or whatever struggles. Maybe we get an idea for a new product because we hear what they are struggling with. We can also personalize those products or offer them, so, even recognizing their birthdays, that makes them feel more appreciated. It builds their loyalty and makes them feel special, which is something we always want to do as a company. We need to stand out in this AI age, right? Everything's computerized and robotic, and there's big companies, and a lot of times customers don't even feel like there's people behind the company. So just by asking and engaging in those kinds of conversations with your customers, you stand out in the marketplace as a company with real people. And that is a really competitive advantage these days. And the last reason I would like to bring up, besides, improving the relations with your employees and your customers, it's good for you as a business owner. Many, many studies have found that just by engaging in this kind of talk with people, it's going to create more of a sense of connection with them. And when we are more connected with people, that is the single most important key to our happiness. We started our businesses because we want to be happier, and then we're just focused on the work. But if we focus on those relationships and just having these casual conversations, we can find more joy in the everyday operations of our business. And then going to work, working with our employees, working with our customers doesn't become such a chore. It becomes more of a pleasure, because we all enjoy that. Even if we are introverts, many studies have shown that introverts themselves also need that kind of human connection. Now, obviously, introverts need some time alone as well, but by having these conversations, you feel more of a sense of connection with people. You're building those relationships, and that makes you a happier person. Even having conversations with a random person in line at the post office makes you feel happier. So think about that. It's going to improve your employees' relations so that your business will become more profitable. It's going to make your customers happier so that you will have loyal customers and get referrals and build your customer base that way. And you will be happier. You will enjoy every day in your business when you focus on even small talk. So how do we put this into practice? Now, you don't need to spend your whole day, hours and hours by the water cooler, wasting your time doing small talk. You can still get these benefits with just very strategic, quick actions. The first thing to do, which is the easiest, is anytime you have a meeting, just spend the first 5 minutes checking in. Even EOS has this at the beginning of their meeting. People talk about a win, and then they give a headline. It gives a way for people to give a personal update. And that's seen as very important to addressing the issues of the company. So this is a powerful relationship builder. Some people do like an emotional check-in, but basically you're acknowledging that the people in the room with you are humans. And when you do that, then they are going to feel more psychologically safe. They're going to share more freely in the meeting. You're going to get better information and you're going to be more productive in the meeting. So those 5 minutes are crucial, not just jumping right in. And then, of course, we could talk about starting on time and all that. But in any case, you want to take those first 5 minutes to establish a connection with everybody else in the meeting. And if it's a regular standing meeting, you can come up with like a random question each week or however often you have it, like what's a hobby you've always wanted to pick up, something that they don't have to think about too hard. I would caution away from saying what's the best, what's your favorite, because that puts a little bit more pressure on people. You want to reduce the cognitive load. That's the whole point of this. You want to make it something easy. And if you put in favorite or best, they immediately are trying to evaluate things. Just say, what was a good, or what's a restaurant you would recommend, or something like that. And what happens is that's then getting them ready to engage in the meeting. It's priming their brain to collaborate with the people in the room. Okay, another thing you can do is just use the phrase, tell me more. That is a fantastic one. It's also tied with wait time, which is a term they use in teaching. Anytime you ask a question, you wait at least 5 seconds, which doesn't sound like a lot, but try it and you'll see. But then you also add tell me more and you wait. And good to great, when they talk about level 5 leadership, one of the things they notice, one of the characteristics of the greatest leaders of these companies was they actually listened more than they spoke. When they had a meeting, they let the others speak. And I think that's really key with the small talk is it's not about you telling all of your stories. You do need to tell some, because if it's one-sided and you're just asking questions of people all the time, it will get weird. People will start to lose trust. But in general, think about that they're talking at least 60% of the time, and then you will share every now, and you always let them go first. So using that phrase, tell me more, and waiting 5 minutes, and you will learn so much about your company, especially when we talk about, that book, Ask, and Adam Grant's Hidden Potential. You learn so much more about your people, and it is one of your greatest pieces of intel right there. So you want to really be paying attention to what's driving people. Maybe you will also get a feeling like maybe there's a project you're working on, there's some big problems with it. And as you have these kind of conversations, you can get that sense through really listening instead of pushing your agenda. And when you sit back and wait, they're going to give more information than if you start the conversation immediately, like starting the meeting by talking about something. Then the other people are going to be less likely to volunteer their thoughts. And I can't remember which CEO is famous for this, but he wouldn't say anything about whatever proposal or topic they were discussing in their board meetings. He would wait for everyone in the leadership team to go around and say their opinion first, because as soon as you say yours as a leader, you've got groupthink, other people are going to respond. So doing this kind of small talk lets them feel comfortable. You're going to get the real pulse of what's going on, what people are thinking. You're creating that environment of psychological safety, which is important for the profitability and really smooth running of your company. This is more of a frictionless. It seems like you've got friction because you're inviting differences of opinion, but it helps your company run more smoothly because you're airing those issues earlier by having that kind of small talk. The other thing is you want to design these casual collisions. So you're kind of orchestrating cooler talk. Now, especially with most businesses now, like for me, I am on virtual all the time. I don't have an office. I don't have a building that I go to. And I know how much when I was in an office, just running in, having those conversations with people, that's when I was more likely to have that small talk. So this is much harder with the remote business, and there are ways to still do it. You can have like drop-in times where people just pop in. You can do some social times, or maybe plan some more like gamey type virtual meetups. But the important thing would be to have occasional in-person meetings where you can have those more casual touch base, or even just asking something personal via a text. So it's important to recognize if you are completely virtual, that you may be missing these opportunities. And you can Google and find lots of other opportunities as well, because there's been a lot of research done on this since COVID hit. But you can find ways to orchestrate these kinds of interactions without being there in person, even though it is a challenge. And that's one of the biggest downfalls of remote work. Another great resource that I have really found helpful was this book, How to Talk to Anyone, 92 Little Tricks for Big Success in Relationships by Lyle Lowndes. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing her name right. But one thing that's really nice about that, because it's 92 tricks, which sounds like a lot, but each one is like a really practical takeaway, like kinds of questions you can ask, techniques you can use. He talks about one thing that's really simple is you wear something that sparks conversations with people. I know a lot of people feel uncomfortable with doing the small talk. That's one reason they want to kind of hide behind the business, but it's part of our human nature that we need this. And it's something I have struggled with. And I have noticed when, I rub people the wrong way and when I just jump into it and they immediately will ask a question to connect. So it's a chance for me to stop, pause, and resume that kind of connection. And so this is something I have to keep reminding myself and remind yourself that this is an investment in that trust dividend, and it pays tremendous rewards in the future. Use at least 5 minutes to connect and use your body language. Repeat back what they say. Find out and learn about the people that you're interacting with. And remember, the added bonus is you're going to feel better too. Share this episode with someone who needs to grow their business and maybe be a little bit happier as well. You can find all the notes and details at masteringbusinessflow.com. Thanks for listening.